Close your eyes and imagine a time before noise ruled the world. No phones, no screens, no rushing clocks. Only iron rails, soft lantern light, and a train moving slowly through the American night of the 1800s. Tonight, you're not just listening to a story. You're boarding a quiet train that carries tired souls, whispered memories, and the gentle rhythm of sleep itself. Stay still. The journey is about to begin. Before the train moves any further, if you find comfort in slow history, quiet journeys, and bedtime stories meant to ease your mind, please take a gentle moment to subscribe to this channel. It helps keep these peaceful stories alive, and it ensures you'll always have a calm place to return to at night. Now, settle in, breathe slowly, and let the rails carry you away. Whispers on the iron rails. The train station rested at the edge of town, wrapped in the soft blue light of dusk. It was the late 1800s in America, a time when evenings arrived slowly and journeys were never rushed. Wooden platforms stretched quietly beside the tracks, their boards worn smooth by decades of footsteps. Iron lanterns glowed gently, casting warm circles of light that trembled in the evening air. Nothing hurried here. A station clock ticked with patience, each second drifting by without urgency. The air smelled of coal smoke and cooling earth, a scent that belonged only to long journeys and quiet nights. Travelers waited in silence. Some sat on wooden benches, coats folded neatly in their laps. Others stood beside leather trunks and canvas bags, their hands resting calmly on handles polished by time. Faces were tired, but peaceful. Far down the tracks, the train announced itself not with excitement, but with a low, steady breath of steam, a sound deep and familiar, a sound that promised movement but never haste. As the engine drew closer, the ground began to hum softly beneath the platform, a gentle vibration, steady, comforting, alive. The iron horse arrived. Black metal glistened under lantern light, steam rising slowly into the darkening sky. The wheels came to rest with a final quiet clank, as if the train itself were settling in for the night. Inside the cars, oil lamps glowed warmly. Curtains hung beside tall windows, ready to shield passengers from the darkness beyond. People boarded one by one. No pushing, no calling out, only the soft creak of steps and the low murmur of polite voices. When the final door closed, the world seemed to pause. Then, with a gentle sigh of steam, the train began to move. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm settled into the night, steady and unchanging, a sound meant to be listened to with half-closed eyes. Outside, the town slowly disappeared, lanterns fading into distance, until only darkness and open land remained. Inside the train, breathing slowed, shoulders relaxed, thoughts drifted. This was travel in the 1800s, not fast, not loud, but patient enough to let sleep arrive naturally. And as the iron rails stretched endlessly ahead, the long night journey truly began.
The train moved steadily into the night, its wheels settling into a rhythm that felt almost alive. Click, clack, click, clack. Each sound followed the last with perfect patience, as if the rails themselves knew exactly how fast the night should move. Inside the carriage, oil lamps swayed gently from the ceiling. Their warm yellow light softened every edge, turning hard wood and iron into something calm and familiar. Passengers barely spoke now. The long day had already taken its weight, and the motion of the train began to lift that weight away, little by little. A man near the window leaned his head against the glass. The vibration of the train hummed quietly through him, steady enough to loosen his thoughts. Across the aisle, a woman drew a blanket across her lap, the fabric thick and worn, carrying the comfort of many journeys before this one. She folded her hands, closed her eyes, and allowed the night to take over. Outside, darkness unfolded slowly. Fields stretched endlessly, unseen but felt. Occasionally, the silhouette of a lone tree passed by, standing still as the train slipped past without disturbing it. The sky above was wide and deep. Stars appeared one by one, small and steady, unconcerned with where the train was going or why. From time to time, the engine released a gentle breath of steam, a soft sigh into the cool night air. It was not a sound of strain, but of effort measured carefully, like someone walking a long road without hurry. Further down the car, someone shifted in their seat. Wood creaked softly. Metal whispered against metal. Every sound blended into the same peaceful pattern, none of them demanding attention. This was how nights were meant to sound. In the 1800s, train travel carried a different kind of silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of urgency. There were no glowing screens to distract the eyes, no sudden alerts to pull the mind awake, only the steady forward motion and the gentle reminder that time was passing exactly as it should. A conductor moved quietly through the aisle, his steps slow and practiced. He adjusted a lamp here, checked a door latch there, then continued on without a word. Passengers barely noticed him pass. Sleep had already begun to settle. Breathing grew deeper. Movements slowed. Somewhere between 1 mile and the next, thoughts softened and drifted apart, no longer needing to hold their shape. Outside, the train crossed a river. For a brief moment, the sound beneath the wheels changed, a hollow echo, a softer resonance, before returning to the familiar click and clack of solid ground. The water below reflected faint starlight, flowing silently in its own direction, unconcerned with the iron road above it. The train continued on. Hours passed without announcement. Time was no longer counted by clocks, but by how deeply the body relaxed into the seat, by how easily the mind let go. A child stirred briefly, then settled again as the rhythm carried them back towards sleep. An older traveler shifted his coat around his shoulders, never fully awaking. Even the engine seemed quieter now, as if it too respected the stillness of the night. Beyond the windows, towns came and went unnoticed. A handful of lights here, a distant lantern there, each one fading gently into darkness. There was no arrival yet, no destination pressing close, only the long stretch of rails ahead, glimmering faintly beneath moonlight, guiding the train forward through the sleeping land. Inside the carriage, the night wrapped itself around every passenger. Thoughts slowed to memories, memories softened into dreams, and carried by iron wheels and quiet intention,
The first night on the rails continued, patient, steady, and kind enough to let everyone rest.
The train did not announce the town before it arrived. There was no sudden sound, no sharp whistle to disturb the night, only a gradual slowing, a gentle easing of motion until the steady rhythm of the wheels softened and changed. Click, clack, became click, clack. Outside the window, a few scattered lights appeared, small and warm, like stars that had settled closer to the ground. The town slept. Wooden buildings stood quietly beside the tracks, their windows dark, their doors closed against the cool night air. A single lantern hung near the platform, its flame barely moving, as if even the wind had chosen to rest. The train came to a calm stop. Steam rose slowly into the sky, drifting upward and disappearing without urgency. Inside the carriage, most passengers did not wake. Those who stirred did so gently, a slight shift of shoulders, a deeper breath, then stillness again. The conductor stepped down onto the platform, his boots touching the ground without sound. He carried his lantern low, its glow revealing worn boards and iron edges softened by time. No crowd waited here, only a man standing beside a small crate, his coat pulled tight, his hat held respectfully in his hands. He nodded once as the conductor approached, and the two exchanged a quiet word, too soft to carry beyond the lantern's light. A door opened further down the train. Someone stepped off slowly, careful not to wake the sleepers behind them. Their bag was small, their movements practiced and calm. The train did not rush them. It waited. In the 1800s, even departures understood patience. The platform creaked gently as footsteps moved away. A lantern flickered once, then steadied again. After a moment, the door closed. No bell rang, no voice called out. The conductor climbed back aboard, lifting his lantern just enough to check the length of the train. Satisfied, he gave a small signal, barely visible but clearly understood. The engine responded with a soft breath of steam. Slowly, carefully, the train began to move once more. The town slipped away without farewell. Inside the carriage, the motion returned like a remembered lullaby. The familiar rhythm found its place again, settling into the quiet spaces between thoughts. Click, clack, click, clack. Outside, open land stretched wide and dark. Fields rolled gently under the moon, their shapes felt rather than seen. A thin line of mist hovered close to the ground, untouched by the train as it passed above it, leaving the night just as it was found. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then fell silent. The sound faded quickly, absorbed by distance and darkness. Inside, sleep deepened. The lamps burned steadily now, their light dimmed just enough to rest the eyes. Shadows moved softly along the walls, never sharp, never demanding attention. A traveler near the aisle adjusted his hat over his eyes. Another turned slightly toward the window, drawn by the faint glow of moonlight on glass. Thoughts wandered slowly, then loosened their hold. The train crossed another stretch of river, its reflection breaking gently beneath the bridge. The sound changed briefly, then returned to its steady pattern. Miles passed unnoticed. Time flowed without direction. This was how small towns existed in the night, not as destinations, but as quiet pauses along a longer road. Each one touched briefly by light, then returned to sleep as the train carried its passengers onward. And somewhere between one town and the next, between one breath and the next, the night continued to open wide, calm, endless, and patient enough to hold every traveler without asking anything in return.
As the night grew deeper, the train seemed to soften its presence. The motion remained steady, but it no longer asked to be noticed. It simply carried on, mile after mile, as if moving were its most natural form of rest. Further along the train, the sleeper car rested in a hush of low light. Curtains were drawn halfway, allowing moonlight to mingle with the glow of oil lamps. Wooden bunks lined the walls, each one simple, narrow, and carefully made. Blankets folded with care, pillows shaped by countless previous journeys. Here, voices were unnecessary. A traveler stepped softly between bunks, boots barely touching the floor. He paused, listening, not for sound, but for its absence. Satisfied, he eased himself onto a lower berth, turning slightly to face the wall, as if giving the night more room. Elsewhere, a woman lay still beneath a thick wool blanket. Her breathing had already found the rhythm of the train, slow and even, rising and falling in time with the rails. Dreams came gently in places like this. They did not arrive suddenly, nor did they demand attention. They formed slowly, like mist over quiet water. Fragments of memory drifted through resting minds. A childhood field, a voice once heard at dusk, the feeling of arriving somewhere familiar without remembering the journey itself. The train did not disturb these thoughts. It carried them carefully, holding them steady between iron wheels and wooden walls. In the corridor, a conductor moved again, his lantern turned low, casting more shadow than light. He checked each door with a practiced hand, then continued on without pause. Even responsibility moved slowly tonight. Outside the windows, the landscape passed unseen, but not unfelt. Open plains stretched endlessly beneath the stars. The moon followed at a respectful distance, never quite catching up, never falling behind. Occasionally, clouds drifted across its face, softening its light, turning fields and fences into pale suggestions rather than clear shapes. The train crossed a long, quiet stretch of land where no towns waited, no lanterns marked human presence, only grass and wind and the distant hush of night creatures moving unseen. Inside the sleeper car, someone shifted gently. A blanket rustled. A pillow was turned to its cooler side. Then stillness returned. Time passed without measurement. Minutes and hours lost their meaning, replaced by the simple fact of motion and the comfort it brought. This was the gift of night travel in the 1800s, the permission to let go. No schedules to check, no destinations pressing close, only the understanding that the rails knew the way and that sleep would arrive when it was ready. In one upper berth, a traveler dreamed of the station left behind, the warm lantern light, the quiet faces, the sound of steam drifting into evening air. In another, a dream formed of open water, a river flowing steadily beneath starlight, mirroring the train's own endless movement. Dreams overlapped, mingled, then drifted apart again, each one private and unhurried. The lamps burned lower now, their flames steady but small. Shadows deepened, wrapping the car in softness. Even the sound of the wheels seemed distant, as if heard through layers of calm. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm remained, faithful and unchanging, a quiet promise that the journey continued, even while minds rested. Somewhere far ahead, the rails stretched onward into darkness, waiting patiently for the train to arrive. And within the sleeper car, held gently by motion and night, the passengers slept, not deeply, not lightly, but in that perfect place between, where dreams drift freely and waking feels very far away. As the night grew deeper, the train seemed to soften its presence. The motion remained steady, but it no longer asked to be noticed. It simply carried on, mile after mile, as if moving were its most natural form of rest. Further along the train, the sleeper car rested in a hush of low light. Curtains were drawn halfway, allowing moonlight to mingle with the glow of oil lamps. Wooden bunks lined the walls, each one simple, narrow, and carefully made. Blankets folded with care, pillows shaped by countless previous journeys. Here, voices were unnecessary. A traveler stepped softly between bunks, boots barely touching the floor. He paused, listening, not for sound, but for its absence. Satisfied, he eased himself onto a lower berth, turning slightly to face the wall, as if giving the night more room. Elsewhere, a woman lay still beneath a thick wool blanket. Her breathing had already found the rhythm of the train, slow and even, rising and falling in time with the rails. Dreams came gently in places like this. They did not arrive suddenly, nor did they demand attention. They formed slowly, like mist over quiet water. Fragments of memory drifted through resting minds. A childhood field, a voice once heard at dusk, the feeling of arriving somewhere familiar without remembering the journey itself. The train did not disturb these thoughts. It carried them carefully, holding them steady between iron wheels and wooden walls. In the corridor, a conductor moved again, his lantern turned low, casting more shadow than light. He checked each door with a practiced hand, then continued on without pause. Even responsibility moved slowly tonight. Outside the windows, the landscape passed unseen, but not unfelt. Open plains stretched endlessly beneath the stars. The moon followed at a respectful distance, never quite catching up, never falling behind. Occasionally, clouds drifted across its face, softening its light, turning fields and fences into pale suggestions rather than clear shapes. The train crossed a long, quiet stretch of land where no towns waited, no lanterns marked human presence, only grass and wind and the distant hush of night creatures moving unseen. Inside the sleeper car, someone shifted gently. A blanket rustled. A pillow was turned to its cooler side. Then stillness returned. Time passed without measurement. Minutes and hours lost their meaning, replaced by the simple fact of motion and the comfort it brought. This was the gift of night travel in the 1800s, the permission to let go. No schedules to check, no destinations pressing close, only the understanding that the rails knew the way and that sleep would arrive when it was ready. In one upper berth, a traveler dreamed of the station left behind, the warm lantern light, the quiet faces, the sound of steam drifting into evening air. In another, a dream formed of open water, a river flowing steadily beneath starlight, mirroring the train's own endless movement. Dreams overlapped, mingled, then drifted apart again, each one private and unhurried. The lamps burned lower now, their flames steady but small. Shadows deepened, wrapping the car in softness. Even the sound of the wheels seemed distant, as if heard through layers of calm. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm remained, faithful and unchanging, a quiet promise that the journey continued, even while minds rested. Somewhere far ahead, the rails stretched onward into darkness, waiting patiently for the train to arrive. And within the sleeper car, held gently by motion and night, the passengers slept, not deeply, not lightly, but in that perfect place between, where dreams drift freely and waking feels very far away.
The train moved onward without hesitation, leaving the open plains behind and entering a stretch of land shaped by trees and water. The change was subtle at first. Outside the windows, dark shapes gathered closer together. The open sky narrowed, replaced by the tall, quiet presence of forest. Pine and oak stood shoulder to shoulder, their tops brushing against moonlight, their trunks disappearing into shadow. The sound of the train shifted. The steady rhythm remained, but it softened, absorbed by earth and leaves, as if the forest itself were listening carefully. Inside the cars, sleep held firm. Passengers rested undisturbed, their breathing steady, their dreams carried gently through this new landscape. The engine released a low breath of steam, its sound drifting upward and dissolving among the branches above. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the trees, painting brief silver patterns on the windows before slipping away again. The forest did not watch the train with curiosity. It simply accepted it, another quiet traveler passing through the night. Somewhere beyond the tracks, a small stream moved slowly over stones, its voice too soft to reach the rails. Further ahead, the train approached a river. The ground beneath the wheels changed, and the sound followed, a hollow, gentle echo as iron met bridge. For a moment, the train seemed to float. Below, the river reflected the moon in broken pieces, each one drifting away with the current, never staying long enough to be held. The bridge carried the train patiently, its wooden beams worn smooth by years of careful crossings. No one inside the cars stirred. The transition was too gentle to pull anyone from rest. As the train reached solid ground again, the familiar rhythm returned, steady and reassuring. Click, clack, click, clack. On the far side of the river, the forest opened slightly, allowing fields and low hills to appear once more. Mist hovered close to the water's edge, unbothered by the passing train. It clung to the ground, moving only when it chose to, slow and deliberate. Inside the sleeper car, a traveler turned quietly, drawn deeper into sleep by the evenness of motion. Dreams shifted with the landscape. What had been open fields became shaded paths. What had been distant light became moonlit water. The train carried these dreams without comment, never altering its pace, never asking for attention. In the 1800s, journeys like this were not meant to impress, they were meant to endure. The rails followed the natural shape of the land, curving gently when required, straightening only when the earth allowed. Nothing fought against the night. Even the engine seemed aware of its place, strong but restrained. Hours passed unnoticed. The forest thinned gradually, trees giving way to open ground once more. Stars returned to full view, scattered across the sky in calm, familiar patterns. The moon climbed higher, its light softer now, less concerned with illumination and more with presence. Inside the cars, the lamps burned low. Their flames flickered only slightly, protected from movement and wind. Everything felt held in balance, motion and stillness, sound and silence, wakefulness and sleep. The train continued on, guided by rails that stretched endlessly ahead, untroubled by distance and unconcerned with time. And as forests and rivers slipped quietly behind, the night remained unchanged, wide, patient, and gentle enough to carry the journey forward without waking a single soul. End. The air grew cooler without announcement. Inside the carriage, nothing changed at first. The lamps still glowed, the sleepers still breathed in slow, even patterns, but outside, the night had begun to shift. Moonlight fell differently now. It settled longer on the ground, revealing pale stretches beside the rails where frost clung quietly to grass and soil. The train moved on, unaware of the change it carried into. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm remained steady, but the sound softened again, as if wrapped in something gentle and thick. Snow appeared first as suggestion, a faint brightness at the edge of the world, a softness where darkness had been before. Then, gradually, it became clear. A thin layer of snow lay across the land, untouched, undisturbed, holding the shape of the night exactly as it had fallen. The rails cut through it in two clean lines, dark and certain, guiding the train forward. As the wheels passed over the track, the sound changed once more, muted, careful, like footsteps placed with intention. The engine breathed out steam, and this time it lingered longer, visible in the cold air, curling slowly upward before dissolving. Inside the sleeper car, a blanket was pulled slightly higher, a shoulder tucked closer to warmth. No one woke. The cold remained outside, respectful of the quiet within. Snow-covered trees stood farther apart now, their branches holding pale weight without complaint. Each limb rested exactly where it had settled, balanced and still. Moonlight reflected off the snow and slipped gently through the windows, casting a faint glow across wooden walls and closed eyes. It was not bright enough to wake anyone, only enough to remind the night of its own presence. The train crossed another bridge, and below it, the river moved dark and slow, its edges traced in white. Ice gathered quietly along the banks, forming delicate shapes that would not last past morning. The bridge held firm. Wood and iron knew this cold well. They had carried winters before. On the far side, the rails continued without hesitation, leading the train deeper into the sleeping land. Snow muffled the world. Distant sounds faded quickly, as if absorbed by the ground itself. Even the train seemed quieter now, its great weight moving with surprising gentleness. Click, clack, became click, clack. Inside, dreams adjusted. Warm rooms appeared in resting minds, fires long burned low, windows glowing faintly against the dark. Memories of hands wrapped around cups, of breath seen in winter air. The motion of the train held these thoughts together, never allowing them to scatter. A conductor paused between cars, his lantern dimmed further than before. He stood still for a moment, listening, not for trouble, but for reassurance. Finding it, he moved on. Snow began to fall again, light and unhurried. Flakes drifted downward without direction, settling wherever they pleased, on fences, on frozen fields, on the tops of sleepers in distant barns. Some touched the windows briefly, then slid away, leaving no mark. The train did not resist the snowfall. It accepted it, carrying its warmth within, its purpose unchanged. Miles passed in silence. The rails guided the way forward, their dark lines steady against the pale ground. Inside the cars, sleep deepened further. Breaths grew slower. Movements became rare. The night felt fuller now, thicker, quieter, wrapped in snow and patience. And the train continued, not rushing toward morning, not lingering behind it, simply moving through the winter night, one careful mile at a time, holding its passengers gently as the snow fell soundlessly around them.
Snow continued to fall with quiet consistency, each flake finding its place without concern for the train that passed through it. The rails remained clear, dark lines cutting forward through the pale land, guided by work done long before this night. Far ahead of the sleeper cars, beyond the gentle warmth and drifting dreams, the engine moved with patient strength. Coal glowed faintly within its heart, fed carefully by practiced hands. The engineer stood steady at his post, eyes forward, movements measured and familiar. He did not fight the night, he worked within it. Each adjustment was small, a turn of a lever, a careful watch on pressure, a quiet understanding of how much effort the rails required. Beside him, the fireman moved slowly, shovel rising and falling in a rhythm learned over many miles. Coal met flame, flame met steam. Nothing was wasted, nothing was hurried. The cab was warm, but not loud. Even here, near the source of motion, the night was respected. Outside, snow gathered on metal edges, melting briefly before freezing again into thin, shining layers. The engine pressed on, its great weight balanced carefully against iron and winter. Behind them, the rest of the train followed faithfully, each car held securely in place, each wheel turning exactly as needed. Along the route, far from towns and stations, small signal lights stood watch. A single lantern glowed beside the track, its color steady, its meaning clear to those who knew how to read it. The train passed without slowing. Further on, a track worker stood beneath the shelter of a small wooden structure, his coat thick, his breath visible in the cold air. He did not wave. He simply watched the train move through the night, counting cars by habit, listening to the sound of wheels for anything out of place. Finding nothing, he turned his attention back to the quiet world around him. Snow settled again. The rails belonged to many hands, hands that laid them, hands that checked them, hands that trusted them enough to let others sleep while crossing. Inside the passenger cars, none of this effort was seen. The sleepers rested without knowledge of the care guiding them forward. They were free to dream because others remained awake. In the mail car, sacks rested securely against wooden walls, letters sealed and stacked, each carrying words meant for morning. A clerk sat quietly at a small desk, his lamp turned low, sorting without urgency, moving envelopes from one place to another with careful attention. The train swaying gently, and the lamp followed, its light never spilling far. Outside, snow thickened briefly, then lightened again, never settling long enough to become heavy. The night adjusted around the moving train, making room for it without protest. Back in the engine, the fireman paused for a moment, resting the shovel against the wall. He listened to the sound of motion, not just the wheels, but the deeper rhythm beneath them. Satisfied, he returned to his task. Steam rose and fell, pressure held steady. The train did not speed up, it did not slow. It continued exactly as it had before, carried by iron, guided by experience, protected by quiet attention. Behind the engine, the sleeper cars remained undisturbed. Snowlight brushed gently against the windows, then slipped away. Breathing stayed even, dreams remained unbroken. The night held everyone in their place, those who worked, those who rested, those who watched from the dark. And the rails stretched onward, unchanged by snow or shadow, ready to carry the train through whatever the night chose to offer next.
Snow continued to fall with quiet consistency, each flake finding its place without concern for the train that passed through it. The rails remained clear, dark lines cutting forward through the pale land, guided by work done long before this night. Far ahead of the sleeper cars, beyond the gentle warmth and drifting dreams, the engine moved with patient strength. Coal glowed faintly within its heart, fed carefully by practiced hands. The engineer stood steady at his post, eyes forward, movements measured and familiar. He did not fight the night, he worked within it. Each adjustment was small, a turn of a lever, a careful watch on pressure, a quiet understanding of how much effort the rails required. Beside him, the fireman moved slowly,
shovel rising and falling in a rhythm learned over many miles. Coal met flame, flame met steam. Nothing was wasted, nothing was hurried. The cab was warm, but not loud. Even here, near the source of motion, the night was respected. Outside, snow gathered on metal edges, melting briefly before freezing again into thin, shining layers. The engine pressed on, its great weight balanced carefully against iron and winter. Behind them, the rest of the train followed faithfully, each car held securely in place, each wheel turning exactly as needed. Along the route, far from towns and stations, small signal lights stood watch. A single lantern glowed beside the track, its color steady, its meaning clear to those who knew how to read it. The train passed without slowing. Further on, a track worker stood beneath the shelter of a small wooden structure, his coat thick, his breath visible in the cold air. He did not wave. He simply watched the train move through the night, counting cars by habit, listening to the sound of wheels for anything out of place. Finding nothing, he turned his attention back to the quiet world around him. Snow settled again. The rails belonged to many hands, hands that laid them, hands that checked them, hands that trusted them enough to let others sleep while crossing. Inside the passenger cars, none of this effort was seen. The sleepers rested without knowledge of the care guiding them forward. They were free to dream because others remained awake. In the mail car, sacks rested securely against wooden walls, letters sealed and stacked, each carrying words meant for morning. A clerk sat quietly at a small desk, his lamp turned low, sorting without urgency, moving envelopes from one place to another with careful attention. The train swaying gently, and the lamp followed, its light never spilling far. Outside, snow thickened briefly, then lightened again, never settling long enough to become heavy. The night adjusted around the moving train, making room for it without protest. Back in the engine, the fireman paused for a moment, resting the shovel against the wall. He listened to the sound of motion, not just the wheels, but the deeper rhythm beneath them. Satisfied, he returned to his task. Steam rose and fell, pressure held steady. The train did not speed up, it did not slow. It continued exactly as it had before, carried by iron, guided by experience, protected by quiet attention. Behind the engine, the sleeper cars remained undisturbed. Snowlight brushed gently against the windows, then slipped away. Breathing stayed even, dreams remained unbroken. The night held everyone in their place, those who worked, those who rested, those who watched from the dark. And the rails stretched onward, unchanged by snow or shadow, ready to carry the train through whatever the night chose to offer next.
The snow thinned gradually, not stopping all at once, but loosening its hold on the air, flake by flake. What remained settled quietly along the ground, softening edges, dulling contrast, making distance feel shorter than it was. The train continued without change. Its movement did not respond to weather or hour. It followed the rails alone, guided by lines laid with certainty through land that no longer resisted. Inside the passenger cars, the warmth remained steady. Oil lamps burned low, their flames steady enough to suggest permanence. Shadows shifted gently with the sway of the train, never sharp, never sudden. A traveler stirred slightly, not waking, only turning enough to find a more comfortable stillness. The seat creaked once, then held. Breathing resumed its quiet pattern. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound carried evenly through wood and metal, unchanged mile after mile. Outside, fence posts appeared briefly, then slipped behind again. A narrow road crossed the tracks, empty and pale beneath the moon, its surface undisturbed by wheels or feet. The crossing passed without pause. No whistle broke the quiet. The road returned to stillness as if nothing had touched it. Further on, the land flattened completely. The horizon stretched wide, barely rising or falling, giving the sky more room than before. Stars spread out above the train, their light calm and distant. They did not flicker, they did not hurry, they watched. The moon moved with quiet patience, its position changing so slowly that it could not be measured. Inside the sleeper car, a blanket slipped slightly from a shoulder. A hand adjusted it without waking, muscle memory responding before thought could form. Dreams shifted again. Some grew quieter, less shaped by image, more by feeling. Motion without effort, rest without stopping. The train crossed another subtle rise in the land. The engine responded with care, not with force. Coal fed flame, flame fed steam, nothing more than necessary. In the engine cab, the engineer watched the track ahead, eyes steady, hands relaxed. There was no anticipation of arrival yet, no sense of nearing an end, only continuation. Behind him, the fire glowed evenly, its color deep and constant, unconcerned with distance. The mail clerk paused briefly, listening to the sound of the wheels, then resumed sorting. Envelopes shifted softly, paper touching paper, with a sound barely there. Outside, a lone tree stood far from others, its branches thin against the sky. Snow clung lightly to one side, leaving the other dark. The train passed it without altering its course. The tree remained. Time moved in a way that could not be divided. No bells marked the hour, no voices announced progress, only motion itself measured the night. A window reflected lamplight faintly, then went dark again as the angle changed. Inside the car, a sleeper's breathing deepened, each breath slower than the last. The sound of the rails softened again, as if the land beneath them had chosen to listen more closely. Click-clack became a single woven sound, hard to separate, easy to accept. The train moved on, mile after uncounted mile, carrying warmth through cold air, light through darkness, wakefulness and sleep side by side. Nothing asked to be noticed, nothing needed to change. The night remained open, wide enough to hold the train without pressing against it, patient enough to let the journey continue exactly as it was.
The sky remained dark, but it had begun to thin. Not enough to be called morning, not enough to change the night's hold, only a subtle easing, as if the darkness were loosening its grip without letting go. The train moved steadily beneath it, unaware of the shift above. Inside the cars, nothing stirred. Sleep held its shape, deep and unbroken, carried forward by the familiar rhythm of the rails. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound felt softer now, less defined, as though it traveled through layers of calm before reaching the ear. Outside, the land lay open and pale. Snow remained where it had settled, smoothed by time and stillness, its surface unmarked. Fence lines stretched quietly into the distance, their posts half buried,
their wire barely visible beneath frost. The train passed alongside them, never close enough to disturb the quiet they held. In the engine cab, the engineer shifted his weight slightly, a small movement meant only for comfort. His gaze remained forward, reading the track by shape and memory as much as by sight. Steam lifted gently into the thinning dark, its white breath fading more quickly now, absorbed by the widening sky. Behind him, the fire continued its steady glow, unchanged, reliable. In the sleeper car, a traveler's hand relaxed its hold on a blanket. Fingers loosened, then grew still again. Dreams drifted closer to wakefulness, not enough to wake, only enough to lighten their edges. Images softened, sounds faded. What remained was motion, constant, reassuring. The lamps burned low, their light dimmed to a gentle presence rather than illumination. Shadows rested where they had settled, no longer shifting with urgency, as if the night itself had grown tired of moving. Outside, a low hill rose slowly, its shape revealed by faint contrast rather than light. The train climbed it without effort, the engine responding smoothly, pressure adjusted without sound. No one inside noticed the change. At the crest, the land opened again, wider than before. The horizon stretched thin and long, and somewhere far ahead, a trace of color began to form. Not brightness, not warmth, only a suggestion that darkness was no longer complete. The train did not greet it. It continued as it had through the night, neither anticipating nor resisting what was to come. A bird shifted somewhere unseen, its movement too soft to become sound. Snow reflected the faintest hint of gray, a tone lighter than the sky above it, barely perceptible. Inside the passenger car, breathing changed subtly. A chest rose a little higher. A breath lingered slightly longer before releasing. Sleep remained, but it was no longer as deep. Still, no eyes opened. The rails stretched forward, their dark lines steady and certain, unchanged by light or dark. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm held. Time remained unmarked. No clock announced the nearing of morning. No voice named the hour. Only the sky's slow shift and the land's quiet response hinted at what waited beyond the night. The train moved on through it all, carrying its passengers gently, not waking them, not slowing for the coming light, allowing the final moments of darkness to remain exactly as they were.
The sky continued its quiet change, not brightening, only easing. Darkness thinned like fabric worn smooth by use, still present, still holding, but lighter than before. The train moved beneath it, unchanged in pace or purpose. Inside the cars, lamplight remained low, its glow now softer than the pale gray gathering beyond the windows. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound of the rails held steady, a constant thread through the shifting air. Outside, the snow reflected more of the sky's new tone, its surface no longer purely dark, but gently outlined. Fields stretched wider now, their shapes clearer without becoming sharp. Nothing stood out, nothing asked to be named. A distant stand of trees appeared as a single mass, their individual forms still hidden, their presence calm and unmoving. The train passed them without acknowledgement. Inside the sleeper car, a traveler shifted slightly, not waking, only turning toward the window as if drawn by the change in light. Eyelids remained closed. Breathing stayed slow. Dreams loosened their hold, not ending, only thinning, making room for the quiet awareness beneath them. The lamps flickered once, then steadied again,
their flames unchanged by the coming day. In the engine cab, the engineer noticed the sky without looking up. The light reached him indirectly, softened by steam and metal. He made no adjustment. The train did not belong to the night alone, nor to the morning. It belonged to the rails. Steam rose and disappeared more quickly now, its white breath dissolving into air that could no longer hold it. The fire glowed steadily, its color deep and constant, a warmth that did not compete with the sky. Behind the engine, the cars followed in quiet alignment, each one steady, each one held in place by weight and balance. Inside a passenger car, a coat slipped from a shoulder and rested against the seat. No hand reached to retrieve it. The body adjusted instead, finding comfort without waking. Outside, a narrow stream crossed beneath the track, its surface dark, its edges traced faintly by snow. The bridge carried the train smoothly over it, the sound changing only slightly before returning to its familiar pattern. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm felt closer now, not louder, but more present, as if the quiet of the night had drawn nearer to the sound itself. The horizon lightened further, a thin band of pale gray stretching outward, not rising, only widening. Still no color appeared. Still no warmth followed. Morning was not arriving yet. It was only waiting nearby. Inside the cars, eyes remained closed. Sleep lingered carefully, aware that it would soon be asked to leave, but in no hurry to do so. The train continued forward, neither preparing to stop nor expecting to continue forever. The rails stretched ahead, dark lines against a lightening world, unchanged, certain. The night loosened its hold one careful moment at a time, and the train carried that moment with it, holding the space between dark and day, without naming it, without rushing it, allowing the journey to remain exactly as it was. The light continued to widen along the horizon, still gentle, still restrained, as if careful not to disturb what remained of the night. The train moved through it quietly. No sound changed. No signal marked the shift. Click, clack, click, clack. The rhythm carried on, unaware of color slowly forming above the land. Snow no longer appeared flat. Its surface held depth now, soft curves and shallow shadows revealed without contrast. Fence posts emerged more clearly, their tops dark against the pale ground, their bases still lost beneath frost. The train passed alongside them, steady and unchanged. Inside the cars, the air felt slightly different, not warmer, not cooler, only lighter. Breathing responded without waking. A chest rose a little higher, a breath released a little slower. Sleep adjusted again, loosening gently, never breaking. The lamps remained lit, though their glow felt smaller now, less necessary, more companion than guide. In the engine cab, metal reflected the faintest hint of color, a soft tone between gray and blue, barely noticeable but present. The engineer remained still, hands steady, attention forward. There was no need to mark the moment. The rails did not change. Steam lifted and vanished almost immediately, its edges thinning into the lightening air. Behind the engine, the train stretched long and quiet, each car aligned, each wheel turning exactly as it had through the night. Inside a passenger car, someone stirred more fully this time, not waking, just shifting weight, finding the edge between sleep and awareness. Eyelids fluttered once, then settled again. Outside, the sky softened further, A faint suggestion of warmth appeared, not from the sun, but from the promise of it. The land remained silent. No birds called yet. No wind stirred. The world held its breath. The train crossed another shallow rise, the engine responding with the same calm strength it had shown all night. Coal fed flame, flame fed steam. Nothing changed in excess. Inside the sleeper car, a blanket slipped lower, then paused, resting exactly where it fell. A hand relaxed beside it, fingers loose, palm open. Dreams thinned to impressions, movement, light, the feeling of being carried without effort. The sound of the rails felt closer now, not louder, but more defined, as if the coming day had sharpened the edges of hearing. Click, clack, click, clack. Each sound landed gently, then faded. Outside, color finally appeared, not bright, not sudden. A pale wash of soft blue stretched upward, lifting the sky just enough to separate it from the land. Snow reflected it quietly. The train moved on through this new space, neither claiming it nor yielding to it. Inside the cars, sleep lingered at its edge. Waking had not yet arrived, but it was near enough to be felt, like a presence just beyond a closed door. No one spoke. No one stood. The journey continued exactly as it had before, held steady by rails that did not care whether the world was dark or light. The night loosened its final hold slowly, without ceremony, without farewell, and the train carried that moment forward, the last breath of night, the first hint of day, balanced carefully between them, moving on without pause, allowing both to exist for just a little longer.
The sky continued to open, not upward, but outward. Light spread thinly, as if laid carefully across the land, revealing shape without demanding attention. The train moved through it as it had through the dark, steady, unconcerned, present. Snow reflected more clearly now, its surface no longer uniform. Small rises and dips appeared, softened by frost, unchanged by passing time. The rails cut through it in quiet certainty, two dark lines guiding the train forward without hesitation. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound remained even, neither softened nor sharpened, only continuing. Inside the cars, sleep rested lightly. Breathing stayed slow, but awareness hovered closer now, like a thought not yet formed. A traveler shifted again, this time opening their eyes briefly, not to see, only to register light, then closing them once more. The lamps still burned, their glow pale against the widening day, but no one reached to extinguish them. There was no need. In the engine cab, metal surfaces showed clearer edges. Bolts, levers, and gauges revealed themselves without changing meaning. The engineer remained focused, hands steady, movements unchanged. The fire glowed warmly, its presence constant, independent of sky or hour. Behind the engine, the cars followed in quiet alignment, each one steady, each one held by weight and balance. Outside, the land stretched long and open. Fence lines ran parallel to the track, their wire now visible, their posts casting faint shadows that rested gently on snow. A low building appeared in the distance, its roof pale, its walls dark. No smoke rose from it.
the train passed without acknowledgement. Inside a passenger car, a coat was lifted and settled more comfortably. The movement was slow, deliberate, done without fully waking. Dreams thinned further. What remained was motion, the sense of being carried, the knowledge of forward movement without effort. The sound of the rails seemed closer again, not louder, but more distinct, as if the day allowed it to be heard without resistance. Click, clack, click, clack. Outside, color deepened slightly. Blue held more certainty. Gray lifted its weight. Still, no sun appeared. Morning did not arrive all at once. It unfolded. A shallow ditch crossed beneath the track, its water dark, its edges traced with snow and ice. The bridge carried the train smoothly, the sound changing briefly, then returning. Inside the sleeper car, someone exhaled more fully, a breath released without thought. Eyes opened again, longer this time, and remained open, not fully awake, but aware. The lamps flickered once more, their flames steady but small, as if acknowledging the growing light. Outside, the horizon lifted another degree. Shapes sharpened gently, trees separated into individual forms, fields revealed their boundaries, distance became measurable again. The train continued without adjustment. It did not slow for morning. It did not prepare to stop. The rails guided it forward as they always had. Inside the cars, sleep loosened its final threads, not pulled away, only set down carefully. The night had passed, not suddenly, not completely, and the train carried what remained of it forward, the quiet, the patience, the unbroken rhythm, into a day that had not yet asked to be named.
The wheels continued their steady, circular song beneath the carriage, iron meeting iron in a rhythm so predictable it slowly softened thought itself. Inside the compartment, nothing dramatic happened. No sudden voices, no sharp turns, only the gentle persistence of motion, the kind that lulled the body into forgetting where it began and caring less about where it might end. A thin vibration traveled up through the wooden floorboards and into the soles of boots, resting loosely side by side. The man by the window had not moved for some time. His shoulders remained relaxed, his chin slightly lowered, eyes half open but unfocused, as if watching not the scenery itself, but the idea of it passing by. Outside, bare trees slid past in an unhurried procession, their branches thin and dark against a sky that had settled into a pale, overcast calm. The train neither hurried nor delayed. It moved at the speed it had decided upon long ago, as though speed were a matter of character rather than mechanics. A faint creak came from the luggage rack overhead as the carriage shifted. No one looked up. The sound blended easily into the larger harmony of travel. The low hiss of steam somewhere ahead, the occasional soft clink from the coupling between cars, the whisper of fabric when someone adjusted their coat without fully waking. Time inside the train did not behave as it did elsewhere. Minutes stretched, then loosened, then lost their edges entirely. A pocket watch rested unused in a waistcoat pocket, its owner content to let the train keep time instead. Each turn of the wheels felt like a counted second, though no one bothered to count. The man by the window inhaled slowly. The air smelled faintly of coal smoke and old wood, a scent already familiar enough to be comforting. His reflection hovered in the glass, layered over the moving countryside,
his face superimposed on fields and fences, as though he belonged as much to motion as to stillness. Across from him, another passenger sat with hands folded, hat tipped forward just enough to shadow his eyes. His breathing was deep and even now. Sleep had claimed him gently, without ceremony. His chest rose and fell in quiet cooperation with the train's rhythm, as though both had agreed upon the same pace. Outside, the land subtly changed without announcing itself. Fields gave way to low hills. A distant line of trees thickened, then thinned again. A narrow river appeared briefly, its surface dull and gray, sliding away just as smoothly as it had arrived. No one pointed, no one remarked upon it. The moment existed, then passed, complete in its passing. The carriage lamp swayed slightly, casting a warm, steady glow that softened corners and smoothed faces. Shadows moved lazily along the walls, never sharp, never demanding attention. The light made the wood paneling appear darker, richer, as if the train carried not only people, but years within its grain. Somewhere farther down the train, a door opened and closed with a muted thud. Footsteps followed, slow, careful, respectful of the quiet. They faded again, absorbed by distance and layers of iron and timber. The sound left no trace, like a thought half remembered and then released. The man by the window finally blinked, once, unhurriedly. His gaze shifted slightly downward, watching the gravel beside the tracks blur into a continuous ribbon of gray. There was something deeply reassuring in its sameness. No surprises lived there, only forward motion. His shoulders sank a fraction more into the seat. The gentle rocking of the carriage made no promises, asked no questions. It simply continued. A long whistle sounded ahead, not loud, not sharp, just enough to announce presence rather than intention. It stretched out over the landscape, then dissolved into the air behind them. Inside the carriage, no one reacted. The sound was expected, almost welcome, like a familiar voice clearing its throat. The train leaned into a gradual curve. Cups rattled faintly in a distant compartment. The carriage answered with a low wooden sigh, then settled again. Nothing spilled, nothing changed. As the wheels straightened, the rhythm returned to its earlier certainty. The same pattern, the same spacing. A lullaby without melody, built entirely of repetition. Eyelids grew heavier without effort. Thoughts slowed, then softened, then began to drift apart, no longer needing to stay connected. The present moment widened, filling the space where worry or anticipation might otherwise have lived. The train went on.